Got one left. Can be here all night.
Why?
Talked to two young gentlemen this week that have been on the waiting list for 2 years.
We have. Ryan.
What, are you lost?
All we're doing.
It makes me.
There are a couple people that have been in it.
That was the question.
But I talked to two gentlemen that have been
Caterpillar's
on the
still
waiting
here.
list, and they don't want to go anywhere
It's
else.
the only one I can think of.
No, there's two more. Or
With the
something.
old one.
They're all booked.
Over to
But
where?
I didn't get any of
Over by the
that.
water?
I know he's
But I know that
Y'all tripping.
Here's the tale for all the fellows.
Good evening, everyone. Here tonight for City Council meeting. It is Monday, October 16th, 2017. We'll start with a roll call and determination of quorum.
Scott. Drew. Nordstrom. Modrick. Solomon. Lewis. Armstrong. Laurenti. Drury. Roberts. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Now we will next go to the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Our invocation tonight is by Carmen Blake.
Good evening. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we praise and love you. And Father, we lift this chamber up to you, Father, that your Spirit will move in a mighty way. Father, we ask that all the public servants here, that you bless them. Father, we ask an anointing of your Spirit of discernment and wisdom. Father, but most of all, we ask that they speak from their hearts of grace and truth, and that love will filter through this place. Father, we speak a blessing on the agenda and all the speakers of this place. Father, we give you thanks for this time of city business to be conducted in a godly way. Father, we give you thanks and praise and glory in all that's going to happen this evening. And we praise and love you. In Jesus' name, amen. Flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I don't eat them, but
Now, we're going to adopt the agenda, so if any council members have any changes to the agenda, they can do that this time. We'll go to Jason Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Barb Garcia asked that we put back on the agenda the number 9 item from the Legal and Finance meeting last week that was continued to the next Legal and Finance meeting. She has a critical deadline. She needs to meet, and so she'd ask us to discuss the item tonight and make a decision if we could. And I can, and that's the approve the Youth and Family Services request to change the use of Community Development Block Grant funding. So if I could get a second to add that to the agenda and then go to vote.
Second by John Roberts.
Excuse me, and we'll add, if we could add that to 23A with the CDBG item. All right. Oh, let's put it on non-consent.
go non-consent.
Let's make it 36B.
36B, is that okay with the rest of the council? 36B non-consent? Okay,
So read that item.
absolutely. So the item, as listed on the Legal and Finance agenda from last week, is item number, item LF 101117-03, approve Youth and Family Services request to change the use of Community Development Block Grant funding. So we want to put that on the agenda to address it this evening. 36B. Here.
Okay. Motion to approve as amended. Second by Nordstrom. Lisa Modrick.
Thank you, Mayor. Clarification of order. Because 23 is regarding the Community Development Block Grant, do we need to move 23 to along with 36 so that we're aligned with what we're approving? No. So we can align this one without discussion of the other? Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All in favor of the motion to add this to the agenda as 36B, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now a couple of awards and recognitions out front. We have someone here from the Sustainability Committee? Oh, Eric, hiding right there. Do you want to do your award now?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't think so, Mayor. False alarm. Excuse me.
Okay. All right. Well, in that case, we have a couple of long-term employee awards, recognitions. And for this, we would have Chief of Police Carl Jagers come forward.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like both Lieutenant Brian Blenner and Lieutenant Kathy Bach to come forward. And I'll give them both their recognition at the same time, since they started this career together and are likely to end this career together, hopefully not for at least another 20 combined years. But both Lieutenant Blenner and Lieutenant Bach have been with our department for over 20 years, which is very much appreciated in today's day. Starting with Lieutenant Blenner, he has served as a patrol officer, a school liaison officer, a patrol sergeant, and our school liaison sergeant. He's also previously served as a school board member. He has his bachelor's degree in sociology from SDSU and recently earned a master's degree in leadership and management from Western Governors University. So we appreciate his 20 years of service. And Lieutenant Kathy Bach also started a little over 20 years ago, and she has served as a patrol officer, a detective, and she's been assigned as a investigator for our Unified Narcotics Enforcement Team, so undercover work. She's also been the supervisor of that division. She's also supervised our Special Operations Division. So she's received her bachelor's degree in Administration of Justice from the University of Wyoming, and her current duties are as our Special Operations Lieutenant. So she's responsible for anything specialized within the department and also for all of our large special events that come throughout the year at the department. So join me in congratulating her also on 20 years. Okay, so if we could have Lieutenant Bach's children come forward for a picture, please. And we'll do Brian first.
Control.
Yeah, all right.
Thank you, everyone. And now on to mayor's items. Item number 4 and 5, to confirm the appointment of Nick Strout as Community Resources Director and authorize Mayor and Finance Officer to sign an employment contract. Can we have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Modrick. Second by Solomon. All in favor of the motion for approval, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Nick, you want to come forward? And now we'll have the swearing in of Nick Strout as our new Community Resources Director.
Hold it where you can hear.
No. Right hand and repeat after me. Can you guys get it? I don't want to be in your way. I state your name.
I, Nick Strout,
Solemnly swear
solemnly swear that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of South
the Constitution of the State of South Dakota
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith
that I will bear true faith
and allegiance to the same,
and allegiance to the same,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or for the purpose of evasion,
or for the purpose of evasion,
that I will faithfully
that I will faithfully
and impartially perform
the duties
of the office
of
Community Resources Director
within the Office of Community Resources,
Rapid City,
South Dakota,
according to law,
and to the best of my ability.
and to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God. Congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, that takes us to general public comment. Time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the council on any issue not on the agenda. Action will not be taken at the meeting on any issue not on the agenda except by placement on the agenda by unanimous vote of the council members present. We have one speaker request for the general public comment period, and that is Neil Leda. Didn't approach the podium there. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yep. All right, so I'm Neil Ida, and I'm from the School of Mines, and I'm here to announce the Night in the Cold charity event. As many of you know, Rapid City has a homelessness rate of approximately 10 times the national average, and October is Homelessness Awareness Month. So we are planning a charity event to benefit Cornerstone Mission. We'll be having families from the public sleep outside overnight, Friday, October 27th to Saturday, October 28th from 5 p.m. to 9 a.m., during which time they'll have dinner, play games, and enjoy a family-friendly movie, and learn about issues that the homeless community face from guest speakers from Cornerstone Mission. The cost is $15 per person, and the first 100 to sign up will receive a free t-shirt. You can sign up online at foundation.sdsmt.edu/nightinthecold, and on the day of at 501 East St. Joseph Street, Surbeck Center. Bring tents, sleeping bags, and other appropriate weather for the weather. If there is bad weather, we have a plan to move the event indoors. All proceeds will go to Cornerstone Mission.
Thank you for that, Neil. And for $15 a person, just make a note of it that I'll be one who will sponsor 10 of those, 10 people, so you can put me down for 10.
Thank you.
All right, and Chad will sponsor. All right, now on to the non-public hearing items, items 6 through 42, and we'll open public comment on 6 through 26. And we have two requests for speaking. One is from James Tomich. This is on item 17.
So, my name is James Tomich. I'm a graduate research scientist that has been working at the School of Mines for about 5 years as a graduate research scientist. Been developing technologies mainly pertaining to wear articles, corrosion, metals. It's metallurgy engineering, and been seeing technologies develop and working with customers from around the country. And then we see these technologies grow, and in a few instances we've actually enabled companies to do the piloting outside of South Dakota because the infrastructure maybe is not here for us to do it, or the space or even the companies to do it didn't exist. So about a year and a half ago, a couple of my colleagues and I started a company called Endless LC, and we're applying hard surfaces, low coefficient of friction metals on top of other metals. Well, we took this to the state and went to the governor's joint vision and took second place in 2016. Great opportunity. Brought us in about 5% of the money you need to buy a laser, and we ended up getting the capital financed and got a laser and a system that can produce this. Been on the waiting list to get into the Rapid City Economic Development Center out there at the School of Mines since October of 2016. Still, we don't have a spot. And this is because there's a lot of great companies here in Rapid City right now using that space. I don't know if you guys know, but there's B9, VRC, a lot of other great people in that area. And been able to actually utilize the resources of the Economics Development Center there for hosting some of our customers while we don't have a space in the conference rooms and whatnot. Also, the School of Mines has been gracious to allow us to corner off a segment with the approval of the director and the administration to have a little corner that I can use for our company. But we have an opportunity here with 108 East Main Street, and I just want to let you guys know that there's a lot of interest and a lot of companies who are on a waiting list to get into economic development space. Anything that the city can do to support, or even any of the city members can do to support this type of activity where we're bringing in potential space for companies and people to innovate and move out from the university and into a space where they can actually hire somebody and have them show up for work. And this is one of my problems. Literally, I don't have a place for my employee to show up to work. So as we move forward and this opportunity presents more to the city, I want to see your guys' support for transferring this, if possible, to the Economic Development Center, because it will bring in a lot of funds and a lot of jobs to this region. So, thank you.
Thank you. Pat, do you want to add anything? Pat Burchell, also on item 17.
Good evening. My name is Pat Burchell, and I'm the president of the Rapid City Economic Development Foundation, which operates the existing Business Development Center on the School of Mines campus. And I did not know you were going to speak tonight, but we have 4 companies on the waiting list right now that we'd like to make room for. We're full. There's no room in the inn, so to speak. And so we did a feasibility study, came back with a recommendation to go forward. The number one space, the number one location was 106 East Main there. And really tonight I'm here to answer questions. I can speak a very long time on this issue, but I want to answer any questions that City Council might have about this project.
Okay. Thanks, Pat. Okay, and that takes us through the speaker requests for these items, and so we'll close the public comment. Now on to consent items, items 6 through 26. The council can pull these items off for individual discussion or approve the lot of them. We'll go to Jason Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item number 17, please.
Ms. Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to pull item number 14, simply just to abstain since it's a contract with Pete Lean & Sons. And I'd also like to pull item number 26, please.
Okay. Any other items to pull off of this calendar? If not, we could have a motion to approve all with the exception of 14, 17, and 26. We have a motion by Lewis. Do we have a second? Second by Richie Nordstrom. All in favor of approval say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Now on to item number 14, which is to approve contract extension to Pete Lean & Sons for ice sanding materials for the 2018 calendar year.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Solomon, second by Modrick, and one abstention here from Amanda Scott, but all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries with one abstention. Thank you. Now on to item 17, to approve resolution number 2017-090 declaring 108 East Main Street surplus and appointing freeholders to appraise the property. We'll go to Jason Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve. If I can get a second, hold the floor.
Second by Chad Lewis.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think this is a wonderful opportunity for us because not often do we have an opportunity in City Council to have a chance to help with economic development, help stimulate and bring jobs to our community, and that's exactly what is being done in this space. I applaud the Rapid City Economic Foundation for all the work they did in bringing this together. It is critically important that we do the best we can to bridge the community with School of Mines of Technology and the things coming out of there, but also just the small business community in general. And while the government doesn't create growth, it can create conditions for growth. And this is one rare opportunity that we have in order to promote economic development. And I know a lot of us run on that every time we have run for offices in our various capacities. And economic development is always a big topic, and here we have an opportunity to actually do something and do some good with it and help improve our community. So this has my support. I'm excited to see what happens. Thanks for all of your work, and I just encourage everybody else to support this. Thank you.
Darla Drew.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like us to squeak out a question for Pat Burchell here.
Okay.
So when we're looking at the business incubator, the word incubator would imply that they grow up and move out. So when does that happen? When is it supposedly, is it a number of years? Do they reach a certain level of employment or what?
There's a 5-year maximum. That isn't, it's a little bit subjective, but generally speaking, it's a hard 5 years, and then they have to move out.
And how many businesses that were created in the incubator are now in business in Rapid City?
I happen to have that number. Since inception, we've had 37 companies in the incubator. Now, there have been 6 that have made it all the way to graduation, which is 5 years. A number of them have been reinvented themselves in other ways. So, a small business oftentimes changes many times. I'm a 40-year banker in the community. I can tell you that a lot of small business, new businesses, they morph into something else. But we've got 6 graduates, and we can account for, there's 139 brand new employees that started with those 6 companies all the way through.
And when did the incubator begin?
The incubator began about 11 years ago.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Burchell, is there anything else? You've presented, each council member up here has some highlights from there. Is there anything specific you would like the audience and the council members to know about the potential of having a second incubator?
Well, it's interesting because it's now going to be called an innovation center. It's really changed the terminology in the industry incubator as it's kind of an old term actually in economic development. So, what we want to do is move forward. We filled up the first one, and I can tell you that we're a pretty conservative board with 4 on the waiting list. The feasibility was lengthy. I think you got the abbreviated version of 6 pages. The company, Strang & Associates, is out of Madison, Wisconsin, and they really did a deep dive in the feasibility study. I think they looked at a total of 14 sites in Rapid City. They came back with 6 that they did a deep dive on, and they came up with its #1 location. As far as feasibility study, they indicated that we have the machinery in place to go forward. The foundation's been around for 25 years. It's been with this one for 11 years, so we have the experience, we have the knowledge, we have the ability to move forward. And so that was the feasibility study really did a checklist of what Rapid City has to move forward, and we have everything in place to go on with a second location.
And thank you. And I've spoken with the mayor and read over the material, and I've spoken with some people out in our community. And thank you for all the work that has been done in the last 11 years. This really does seem like a good partnership. Based on the information we have today, the item before us tonight is to simply do the first step, which is to declare this a surplus so that we can get an appraisal on it. My understanding is that this will be the donation to the city. Sorry, this will be the donation portion by the city, is this parcel of land, and there will be no other funding required from the city for the ongoing operations of this. I do hope that city staff considers when they bring it forward that if in any time in the future this is no longer used for the intention purposes that this is being deeded over, whether it's a lease or a deed, I would hope that it would revert back to the city. But I sure hope you go 50 to 100 years and keep this innovation center going. Thank you very much. Mayor, I yield.
Thank you. John Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Pat, since you're standing there, I support this too. I think it's a great idea. I know you guys have done wonderful work in the incubator now. Can I ask you, currently the incubator that is up and running, how's that funded?
It's funded by the lease payments from the tenants. They do pay a monthly lease payment, so that's how it's funded. We also have owned two business parks in Rapid City, by the way. So over the last 25 years, we've sold parcels of land. So we've been in a position of, in a cash position now to move forward. So that's why we're not asking for additional funding. We have that money on hand to go in and do the improvements to the existing structure down there, and also to dress up the place and do the landscaping, et cetera. So it's funding itself right now, the current incubator is, and actually, generating a little cash flow as well.
That's what I was curious about. I was wondering if there was any cash flow on it whatsoever. So going forward, as you do this in phases, I imagine that there'll be cash flow off the next one, then you'll be able to get into the following phase after that.
As part of our feasibility study, we actually did a budget for 5 years. We think in 24 to 36 months we'll be at break even, given that we have a waiting list and the interest in even before we get going.
My question is, out of the 6 businesses, or my next question is, out of the 6 businesses that made it through, out of those 6, how many of them stayed in Rapid City?
I believe all of them did.
Okay.
All 6.
That's what I was wondering. So anyway, like I said, I think this is a great idea. Going forward, we're just at the first step of this. There'll be a lot of discussion coming in the future on it. But, whether we give you this property or lease this property to you or whatever we do, I hope it gets in your hands, and I hope you're as successful with this one as you were with the one that you currently have. So thank you.
Steve Laurenti.
Thank you, Mayor, and I just wanted to resonate some of what's already been said, but as Alderwoman Scott clearly pointed out, what we're doing tonight is surplusing the land, making it available for this appraisal, and then all of the different steps, as Alderman Roberts was talking about, will be coming back to the council for us to do exactly what we all need to do, which is to read through it thoroughly and do all the due diligence that's necessary to make sure that this great idea on its surface, we need to hammer into some of the details, go an inch wide and a mile deep, if you will, and get all of the questions answered for the taxpayers, because this is an expensive piece of land that we purchased with a different intended use. However, I think this is a very good idea. I think it's something that will be a job creator, especially with the South Dakota School Mines right there at that location. The development itself for that area, I think, will help the entire area as it moves into the downtown. So I think it's a great idea, but I do believe as we go through this step by step, we need to ask all of the pertinent questions and not be afraid to answer very detailed, hard questions. Thank you, and I appreciate it.
Okay. The motion on the floor is for approval. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 26, to authorize Mayor Finance Officer to sign an agreement between the City of Rapid City and Rural America Initiatives for the use of city vision funds to construct a new Head Start facility. We'll go to Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. I see Mr. Longfox out in the audience. If I can ask him a couple of questions, if he's willing, Mayor?
Yes.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Longfox.
Good evening. I am Bruce Longfox.
First of all, thank you for continuing with this initiative. I know it's a very worthwhile endeavor. I do have a couple questions because I know that you've been before the City Council in the past. And where exactly is this groundbreaking going to occur?
Where or when?
Where?
It's 2112 South Valley Drive.
South Valley Drive.
And what I tell everybody else is, do you know where the Valley Sports Bar is? Take a right, go half a block, and it's on the left there. It's a nice flat alfalfa field, part of the Johnson Ranch subdivision, with Hanny Chaffee being the developer.
Thank you. It seems to me when you came before the City Council a while ago that this was actually going to go up in my ward, Ward 4. What happened to that parcel of property?
It's mostly a timing thing. We went into partnership with another developer, and they had said that they would be ready for us to go in 2 years. That 2 years passed on April 22nd of this year, and so on the advice of our some of our capital campaign, we started to search for a new site, which we purchased on June 15th.
So were you, so you only have the one property now? You only own the one property down on South Valley Drive?
We actually own the other one still, but that we do not have title to that yet, so that's in process, let's say.
Okay, so you don't own the title on the property?
The property that we're going to build on, we do have title to. The other one in your ward, we do not have title to it yet.
So did you purchase it as of April 22nd, or did you purchase it 2 years ago? And I guess my real question is, what's holding up the title on the property?
This may not be the forum for that. That may be going towards litigation.
Oh, okay.
And we have asked for our money back on that. We did pay for it 2 years ago, but our getting title to it depended on its being improved and platted, and that has not happened yet.
Okay, all right. Thank you for clearing up the confusion that I had on this. Good luck, because I know whatever money you have into that parcel, I know you can very much use that money on the construction of this new building. So, and I do know that this is another good partnership between the city and Rural America Initiatives. And so, thank you. And this may, as you said, this may not be the forum for me to ask any more questions, so I'll just leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amanda.
Jason Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve.
Second.
Second by Chad Lewis. All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That takes us through the consent items. On to non-consent items, items 27 through 42. We'll open public comment on those items now. And we have speaker requests, one from Jerry Wright on item 27 and 28.
Good evening. I'm Jerry Wright, citizen of Ward 3. Privileged to be here. Always feel it's good to serve where we have an interest and a sense of duty. I have a sense of duty for water at this time. And I know that the city has spent the past year, plus or minus, with the committee, with their consultant and their staff, members of the council looking at the rates for water and wastewater. I just want to let you know that I support the rates that you're looking at. I know that it's a significant amount in some ways, but the analogy I like to use is that with all the study that's been done, and we know that there are issues out there that we heard about a year or two ago about requirements that are coming down the track, that if we do not raise our rates to where we are prepared to do that, we will find our utilities, our water and wastewater, almost in the situation of our streets. in poor repair due to lack of funding. So let's not make that mistake. Now, it's an opportunity to make a decision. It's very positive and very good, and it's, I think, a wise thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. And now also on item 27, James Bialotta.
Good evening, Council. My name is James Bialotta. I live in Ward 4, and many of the people in my district are wrapping their heads around this in a weird way, trying to figure out how they now want to raise the water rates after paying for a drainage tax when we have neither drainage to support the tax. I keep getting told by Public Works that we were supposed to have drainage 2 years ago, then it was this year, now it's 2 more years. We're paying for taxes that were added that the city hadn't ever had before, and I'm wondering why that money hasn't been piled up and earmarked for those drainage projects, and why we need to raise the rates almost 50% in the course of 5 years. I'm just wondering if you're going to be putting people out of the city with the raised rates and raised taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. Now on to item 29, we have a speaker request from Pat Muldoon.
Good evening. My name is Pat Muldoon, and I reside at 135 East Indiana Street, which is across the street from the basketball courts currently at South Middle School. I am very, very concerned over the fact that they want to develop the hill behind us. There has not been any samples taken, to my knowledge. According to the School of Mines, what they recommend is that there's a core sample taken at a 45-degree angle for 100 feet down 100 feet, and to do that 5 to 8 times per acre. The hill exists of 10 acres. I really don't want to see the homes in that area end up like Hillcrest. I have pictures of what Hillcrest looked like in 1946, which was 71 years ago. If anybody would like to see them, they are available. And I guess I voiced my opinion by starting a petition. Thank you. Now, some of those pictures aren't super clear because of the fact that I had to print them from the School of Mines, what they had. School of Mines, Hillcrest is nothing but shale. It's called Moray Shale. I believe the hill behind us is also Moray Shale. There's cracks in driveways, sidewalks are all crooked. We've had one person in the block that had his basement wall that collapsed. Of course, he's the only one that has a basement. It's just kind of astonishing to think that they want to put 14 houses on that hill. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now on items 35 and 36, James Bialotta.
Good evening again. This goes to some problems I had as a contractor. Most people don't know I had spinal fusion and I retired 3 or 4 years ago. In regards to services and licensing permits, there's always been a problem in Rapid City of not finding guilty individuals who refuse to obtain permits or dodge licensing requirements. This has been going on decades to the point where it had to get to the Rapid City Journal about a contractor, Jason Barnum, who was sent to prison for 10 years because everybody under the sun had work performed by him and no permits were taken out. That's a serious loss of revenue for the permits. Now, if the city had gone and fined this individual, double the permit fee as required by the ordinance, we wouldn't have to be raising the rates on these items. Homeowners wouldn't have to pay more for the roofing permit because the illegal contractors, you would have nailed them for double. And so I would really hope that, and I've recommended it before, that the city hire a weekend inspector, because it seems that Friday night at 5 is when all the construction really starts in Rapid. And I think it would be a great benefit. I even volunteered to do it at one point for the city, saying that I would only work for 25% of the take and guaranteeing I could make $100,000 a year. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And that'll close the public comment time on these items. And then that'll take us to ordinances, starting with item number 27. And I wonder if I could have our legal finance chair, Amanda Scott, read in the ordinances, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 27 is the first reading, ordinance number 6201, an ordinance to revise the rates, fees, and charges for the city's water utility by amending Chapter 13.08 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. I make a motion to approve.
Had a second by Lisa Modrick. All in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Aye. Motion carries.
Item number 28 is the first reading, ordinance number 6202, an ordinance to revise the rates, fees, and charges for the city's sewer utility by amending Chapter 13.16 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. I make a motion to approve.
Second. Second by Richie Nordstrom. All in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Aye. Motion carries with 2 noes, Drury and Roberts. Next item, please.
Item number 29 is the first reading of ordinance number 6193, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of Chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. A request by KTM Design Solutions Incorporated for McGuire Services LLC for the rezoning from Park Forest District to Low Density Residential District for property generally described as being located southeast of the intersection of Oak Avenue and Indiana Street. And I'll yield the floor.
Okay, motion to deny by Modrick, second by Nordstrom. We'll go to Steve Laurenti.
Thank you, Chair. If I may, I'd like to ask Public Works a question on this, if I may, please.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Tech, I'm trying to recall in developments when the soil testing, I know we passed some soil testing requirements in the last 3 or 4 years. Can you kind of give us a summary of what that involves? Are you prepared to do that this evening?
I am. However, the recommendation from Planning Commission on this item is to deny the request, right, and that's consistent with the motion that was made. In regards to soil testing, any improvements of public nature, be it streets, water, sewer, drainage facilities, a geotechnical analysis must be done in effort to show that those improvements can be made and will meet the design criteria that we have in place. As far as any requirements to do soil testing on private property, we really don't have that requirement. We can add that as part of a plan development, and I believe that's what the plan development has not been submitted for this project. So therefore, the requirement's not there because they haven't chosen to submit that yet, and thus the recommendation to deny.
Okay, thank you. I yield.
John Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And can I ask Dale Tech a question too?
Please do.
Hey, Dale, typically on the PUD, that comes after the zoning, doesn't it? Typically, you don't have a planned unit development on a project that doesn't have its zoning yet?
The Planning Commission made a recommendation that a final plan development be submitted prior to them taking action on the zoning. As far as procedurally, if that is correct or not, I don't know that I can answer that.
I didn't ask that. I asked typically, normally. How does the process normally work?
A plan development can be issued on any, or can be submitted for any property regardless of the zoning.
I guess what I'm trying to say in this fact is the developer came forward, wanted to take a look at possibly doing a project down here. Wasn't going to do it without the zoning because wasn't going to spend the money on the geotechnical and everything else that he had to do before he got zoning, because of the fact that he was worried he might spend $100,000 and then we'd come back and say, we're not going to give you the zoning anyway, even though it may have showed that this project was feasible to do. Whether it's feasible to do or not isn't my call. I mean, well, I guess it is because we're voting on this tonight. But one of the things that worries me is sitting here as a council not giving people the opportunity to do with their property what they may or may not wish to do. You know, just because these people have owned this property for 60 years and it's been basically a neighborhood park doesn't mean they still shouldn't have the ability to do something with their property in the future. Now, if the geotechnical says that it's possible to do something on this property, they should have the opportunity to look at that and do that. But like I said, they have made it very explicit. They're not going to spend the money unless they have the zoning, because to them, you know, it's putting the cart way in front of the horse if they don't have even the opportunity possibly to get the zoning after the fact if they spend $100,000. So anyway, the motion on board, I will not vote for now. We've seen this over and over and over again where neighborhoods come in, and I respect the neighborhoods. I respect the people of the neighborhoods. But when you buy a piece of property and you have something beside it, there's always a chance something else can happen in the future. Now, this is zoned a little bit differently because it's zoned park forest. You know, and I wish in a perfect world, I wish the city of Rapid City had enough money to purchase this for a park. But unfortunately, we don't. But you know, one of the things that was said, the neighborhood could always pitch in together and possibly buy this to keep it as a park in the future. But I really have a hard time, personally, telling a person that they can't do what they want to do to their own piece of property, or at least have the opportunity to look at doing that to it. So, thank you.
Jason Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And if I could direct a question to our new planning director, Ken Young.
Please do.
Ken, I'd love to get your input on this. I thought Alderman Roberts brings up an interesting point about zoning before or after testing, especially on a park use like this. Do you have any input on this particular item and how you see this should play out?
Yes, I do. Thank you. My comments are surrounding the appropriate actions that should be taken or looked at prior to a zoning request coming forward. A zoning request is something that is very preliminary, that deals with possibilities. And to require soils testing, planned development, detailed studies is neither appropriate nor is it typical in most communities to require that prior to a rezone. There are many possibilities that can happen within zoning, and there are many things that can be determined after a zoning analysis, that whether or not it is appropriate for that type of development to occur. The soils analysis and the other detailed development studies that we may require will bear that out. And that is the appropriate time to make such requirements, not usually prior to a zoning request.
Okay, thank you. Yield.
Thank you. Chad Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I thank you, Mr. Young, for those comments, and Mr. Roberts as well, because I'm intimately acquainted with this piece of property. That's where I got my first concussion when I was sledding. That's probably why I'm up here today even. But I used to sled on this hill all the time when I was a kid and ride my bike up and down it, and I do appreciate the fact that the neighborhood's obviously concerned. However, I do agree with the point Mr. Roberts made and Mr. Young's making about if they want to rezone it, go ahead and let them rezone it. Doesn't mean they're going to be able to build it anyway, because they're going to have to, you know, go through all the steps to get to that process to make sure it's even feasible, and they're going to have to go then require all the tests required for the soils and whatnot. So it just seems to me we're getting a little cart before the horse by denying this right away and making them jump through all these hoops before they even, you know, have a project. I mean, I don't feel like that's a fair chance. Like they said, they own the property for how long now, 60 years or whatever it is, and you know they've just seen they've been sitting on it forever and they don't have any, it's never been used, at least to get a chance to try it and see if it's going to be, you buy a piece of property, you have certain rights that come with that, and hopefully you can at least explore the opportunities that might be available to you. I think everybody else would like that same opportunity if they own this property as well. But like I said, I understand the neighborhood's concern. It's been, like you said, a community park basically for the last however many years, and I do appreciate that, but I'll be voting against this motion. Thank you.
Mayor, if I may. Sorry,
Dad?
I meant to add to my comments. I think the appropriate analysis that can and should be done at this point in time when we're considering zoning change is what is the future land use designation on that property, and why has that land use designation been put on that property, and what is the proper reasoning for changing that. So if we feel that it is necessary and important to maintain Forest Conservation District as the land use, future land use, and the Park Forest District as the zoning, is that appropriate zoning for the area, then we can come up with criteria or reasoning against the zoning, not necessarily what can be developed there, but is the zoning appropriate? And that's what we should base our decisions on.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Lisa Modrick.
Thank you. I echo a piece of what Mr. Young just said, because I think that's what we're reviewing here is the appropriate time to rezone Park Forest District. And when it's gone through our commission, it's come back through us, we've had public comment, we've got soil comments of those that have lived in the area currently. They've been there a long time. They've felt the issues of soil. It makes it pretty important to have a realization, is this a Park Forest District for a reason? And is this the time to change that Park Forest District without knowing what the ground is? And we know we have slippery slope in this area. We have a lot of slippery slope, and this would be, I believe, the burden of proof of the property owner to make sure he shows to the Planning Commission that this ground is solid and it's not going to buckle down on any of the 14 homes that could possibly be built there. Once it's there and the problems happen, there's no reversing it. There isn't a suit out there that wouldn't take years. Meanwhile, people lose their homes. So it's Park Forest for a reason. I like the idea that maybe we need to dive a little bit deeper into what we've got, but it's not the city's responsibility to do those cores. And the property owner knows by owning it that it's Park Forest District, and that is the challenge, is changing something into a new density or a new district, if in fact this is the place to do it. We have had a lot of reporting on this. There's been a lot of reads. We've been looking at this now for months, not just a day. And that's why I'm quite comfortable with the motion of deny. This is the time to maintain that Park Forest District and keep it that way at this present time. Thank you.
John Roberts, minute 40, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a substitute motion that we approve the zoning in conjunction with the planned unit development. And can I hold the floor for a minute?
Okay, we have a second from Chad Lewis. Go ahead.
Thank you. Can I ask our new planning director a question or two?
Yes.
Mr. Young, if we rezone this in conjunction with planned unit development, they will have to come in, they will have to show us all of they'll have to do the soil testing, they'll have to bring forward every suggestion they have as far as platting it, how they plat it, what the lots are, where the roads are going to be. They'll have to do I don't want to go through everything they're going to have to do right here, but I mean there's many, many steps they're going to have to jump through before they can do absolutely anything as far as moving dirt, correct?
That's correct.
So this just allows them the opportunity to come in and actually spend the money to do the testing and look at if this is even feasible, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you very much.
Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. May I ask a couple follow-up questions of Mr. Young, please?
Yes.
Thank you. So, Mr. Young, Alderman Roberts has made a substitute motion, and I'm just going to ask procedurally, is this appropriate to go ahead and change this and link the rezoning to a PUD at this time? It just seems to me that we've always seen both things as two separate items on the agenda. If this is set up, is that like having a stipulation on this, that they have the rezoning if they supply a PUD before the planning commission, and if they don't, then the zoning stays Park Forest?
Well, that's the assumption that is made with that type of a motion. I think we would want to have some clarification in regards to what you just said, that in case a plan is not presented, then the zoning would revert. I think there's a little bit of challenge legally in moving forward with that type of motion. I would defer to the city attorney on that. I think the cleanest way to do this is just to rezone without attaching some requirement for plan development, because that is going to have to be submitted before we can approve anything anyway. It's kind of assumed. But as far as attaching it to the zoning request, that's not necessarily the cleanest way to do that.
Thank you, Mayor. May I also follow up with Mr. Joel Endine, our city attorney?
Yes.
Thank you. Joel, do you have any other comments? What would your recommendation be with this current motion before us?
Well, I mean, my sentiments generally echo the planning directors. I would say we used to quite frequently, either in our future land use plans or in rezoning, put a stipulation that a plan development was required. And frankly, we did it excessively, and it wasn't normally a specific plan, but it was a way to have more control over how the land ultimately developed. And it's something that I would say over the last few years we've moved away from, but it used to be fairly common practice. I don't think you need a specific plan development. The zoning wouldn't revert back, but the stipulation that there be a plan development would continue. I guess my concern about taking action on it tonight is really whether we fully understand what, if you approve the rezone, will be allowed. I think if plan development, it certainly makes it a much safer course of action, in that likely anybody, if they want to develop, that's going to have to come in, and then all of these things that we're talking about, like the core samples and all of that, are going to have to be done in order to get the plan development approved. So you still have another level of review that you're comfortable you're going to have with the plan development stipulation.
Thank you. I guess the reason I posed these two questions is that my concern would be the city council taking an action and tying a rezoning to a plan development when the applicant hasn't come forward and said that they're okay with that. So that's the reason I would pose those questions. I'm not really sure how I'm going to vote on this current one, because I haven't heard from the applicant. Mayor, I have a minute 33. May I go back to Joel Endine?
Yes.
Thank you. Joel, do you have a further comment?
Well, I mean, the applicant has requested the rezone, but ultimately it's up to you to decide what's appropriate. And it seems to me the concern here is, what do we let happen with this property? Because of the nature of the property and the topography, you question whether or not it's appropriate to further develop this. So just because the applicant asked for one thing, if you don't feel it's appropriate to just straight rezone it without the plan development, I think you have that right to say, well, we'll rezone it and we'll put the stipulation for our plan development. Because of the specific conditions of this property, we think it's inappropriate to have that level of protection in this area, because we want to make sure that before anything's developed, we're going to see it. Now, I would assume that they're going to have to plat the property, so at that point, you know, some of the stuff may be triggered anyway if they're going to develop it. But I think you do have the ability to put the stipulation on it based on the unique nature of this property and the legitimate concerns you have about developing this without some additional testing, like the soils testing.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for the discussion.
Lisa Modrick, 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll use mine in good time. We've got highlighted documentation on here that states why the denial is being the recommendation. Several of these state that the rezoning request shall be denied based on the Planning Commission's recommendation. And then when you go on and you see their notes that were made most currently, their notes also state that, and again in highlight form, October 5th Planning Commission's meeting to be heard was in conjunction with a final plan development overlay. The applicant has indicated that they will not be submitting a final plan development overlay. This plan is not prepared. There's a number of reasons, if you take a look at the information that we've got before us, why this should be denied at this time, and I would stand strong again to follow the recommendation. It's not ready yet. This project is not cooked. Thank you.
Darla Drew.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question for the woman that spoke first. Was her name Pat? Is that? Yeah. Could I talk to you for just a second?
Yes.
Hello, Pat. So you've lived in this area for quite some time, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Would I be correct in saying that you're speaking for a lot of your neighbors here?
I am, hopefully all of the neighbors.
What seems to be the concern or major fear if this goes forward?
The biggest concern that myself and I think everybody else has had is the damage that's already been done to our property from the hill, sliding. If they put 14 houses up there like they want to do, what are we going to have, another Hillcrest? I mean, the houses on Grandview are all going to have to be reinforced. Every house that they put in is going to have to be reinforced. It just, to me, economically is not a feasible action.
Well, I'm not a specialist on soil and conservation of soil types, whatever, but does it seem possible that maybe putting some homes on that hill would keep everything from falling into you?
No, actually, I don't think so. I think it would reinforce the falling. For example, our garage has a 6-inch wide X crack.
Yeah.
And it's been filled in not once, but 4 separate times. And it keeps on cracking. Sidewalks, if you take a look at the sidewalks and the driveways in the area and the houses, the cracks of the inside of the houses, it's so unstable now that if you start monkeying with that hill, it's going to get more unstable. And as it gets more unstable, there's going to be more damages done to the homes that are already there.
Well, I'm kind of torn on this one too, but I do understand that, you know, it probably would cause more harm to your homes that are already in place, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Chad Lewis, 330.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question for, I think, probably Ken Young, I'm not sure. And I apologize, Mr. Young, I realize you're pretty new to the thing. Are you familiar with our soil testing requirements for building permits in this town, over excavation and whatnot?
I know there are requirements, but I can't cite
I just
you with
want to throw that out, that we just approved that a couple years ago, where now if you build a house in this town, you have to the soil tested before you do it, and then if you don't meet certain criteria, you have to over excavate and put in engineered fill below the foundations. So it's created quite a burden to the building community as far as costs of housing and affordable housing, but the building practices are such now that we don't have as much issue with the cracking and the whatnot of the foundations on expansive soils like that. And I'd also add that, you know, this is, if that risk is out there, you know, that's a risk the builder's taking. Obviously, they'll have to be the ones that pay for that and or are responsible for that. So, you know, I can understand that obviously the neighborhood doesn't want it and looking for any reason to get rid of it, but to say that, you know, you don't think it's going to happen or it shouldn't be happening, that's the risk. They're allowed to make that risk. They want to make that choice. You know, I appreciate your viewpoint, but you know, it's just like telling me I shouldn't try to cross traffic really fast, you know, when the traffic's going hard. Well, if I'm going to go for it, I'm going for it. It's my problem if I get hit. So, anyway, yeah.
Okay, thank you. The motion on the floor is to approve this with planned urban development. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Roll call, please.
Scott. Drew. Nordstrom. Modrick. Solomon. Lewis. Armstrong. Laurenti. Drury. Roberts. Tie vote.
Okay, the chair votes no. We're back to the original motion, which was to deny the rezoning. Everyone clear on that? Okay, motion on the floor is to deny the rezoning on item number 29. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Roll call, please. I don't know why I did that. Roll call, please.
Armstrong. Laurenti. Drury. Roberts. Scott. Drew. Nordstrom. Modrick. Solomon. Lewis.
Chair votes aye. Next item, please, item 30.
Item number 30 is a first reading of Ordinance 6192, an ordinance to adopt the 2017 edition of the National Electrical Code and to amend local provisions by amending Chapter 15.16 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. I make a motion to approve.
Second by Steve Laurenti, and we'll go to John Roberts.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to pull this up real quick. And the reason I did is we're always talking about the cost of building new homes. And unfortunately, there's really nothing we can do about this because it went through the state and it's an international code. But this code alone will add a little more than $1,000 to every new home built. So when we're talking about affordable housing, we're talking about building new homes. All the regulation that's coming from the state and the federal government, every time something new comes through, there's typically a cost to housing, and this one added over $1,000 to every new home. So I just wanted to tell you that. Thank you.
Okay. Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of comments about this, adding X number of dollars per house. I'm for safety, and that's the reason why I'm going to be supporting this. And the terms that we're loosely throwing around right now is affordable housing. I want to make sure that the folks understand the difference between affordable housing and fair market housing. There's even another bracket called workforce housing. Most of the considerations that have been coming forward to us now have been fair market housing, not affordable housing. And there's a distinct difference between all the categories. So I just want to make sure that the public understands that the reason why I'm supporting the electrical code, and if there is a cost increase to it, it's because I'm on the side of safety for the public. Thank you.
Ed Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I completely disagree with everything you just said, but can I speak a question for the fire chief, please?
Yes.
Mr. Seals, are you prepared to answer any questions regarding this?
I'm not an electrician, but I'll try.
Okay. Well, I just know that the Chief Billings, Chief Billings? Yeah, had said he didn't know that this was actually that effective at actually preventing much, but I don't know if you're prepared to answer this requirement. Do you know much about it?
All I know is I visited with Chief Billings earlier this afternoon about this. Just to clarify what changed in the 2017 code, it was really the 220 amp and those that are below 20 amp and 20 amp and less, 220 volt, 20 amp and less. So if it's on a circuit that your dryer or that type of thing that's over usually 30 or 50 amp, and also to clarify, to my knowledge, this is GFCI, not arc fault.
Okay, thank you. I'm not going to bother trying to explain all that to the public, but the fact of the matter is every time we have a new regulation, it does cost money, folks, and that somewhere falls in the category of affordable. I don't know. I could argue about that all day long, but just remember that we just got out of a housing summit. Was it Friday or whatever, Thursday or Friday? We talked about the price of housing in Rapid City is outpacing the wages in this town, and yet we keep denying every time someone brings forth someone that's affordable workforce, whatever term you want to use, places people can afford to buy and live in. And we need to really think about that when we're out there talking about how we want to make the houses affordable for people to live in, and keep throwing regulations and whatever we want to call them at these people every time they want to do something, and denying it if they want to bring forth an exception. And I mean, like I said, the housing summit, I wish everybody could have gone to it because it was really educational in that regard. And I'm very adamant about trying to defend that industry. And all the new regulations that come forth, I realize this is nothing the city had anything to do with. It's a state requirement, like Mr. Roberts said, but it's still, the public doesn't need to know about that. It's something we really need to work on. Thank you.
Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. May I ask a couple follow-up questions of Mr. Dale Tech, please?
Yes.
Thank you. So Dale, at the Legal and Finance Committee meeting, some of these questions were brought up, and the discussion of GFI versus the ARC. I just refer to it as ARC because I don't understand the technical. Thank you. The main thing is that I believe Mr. Solon had indicated to the Legal and Finance Committee is that these electrical codes are basically already in existence, that by adopting these current electrical codes currently at the city level, it's really not changing anything at this time. Has something changed since the Legal and Finance Committee meeting, or is that statement still relevant?
That statement is still relevant, and as I understand it, this would have no impact to residential code, no change. That code's already in existence. There are some changes on the commercial side of things, but it doesn't affect the residential.
And I believe also, if my memory serves me correctly, that Mr. Logie, Jeff Logie was present, and he even indicated that, much like Alderman Lewis had stated, you know, obviously the public always needs to be familiar with whatever legislation and government regulatory laws are coming before us, but he even admitted that just to make the public aware that these things are changing, he said that these actual organizations like the Electricians Association and the Builders Association and those, they really need to go to our state and get the laws are changed at the state level, if not even the federal level. Do you recall him making that comment?
He did, yes. He talked about the grassroots level approach to talking to the state in regards to both the plumbing and the electrical codes.
Thank you. So I'm just trying to reiterate what Alderman Lewis had said, is that yes, I believe the public needs to know. We also need help from the public. If you have a passion for any of these functions for the building codes or the Electricians Association or anything else, please watch it at the state level and the federal level, because there is a lot of oversight that comes down. But for the discussion from the Legal and Finance Committee meeting and from the discussion up here, I just can't let it go. This one that the City Council of Rapid City is passing tonight literally has no change from yesterday to 20 days after second reading. Nothing is going to be different about it except maybe the GFI is going to be required on a dryer. So, and I believe when we looked that up, it was less than $100 for the part. So, thank you.
Jason Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question for Dale Tech, if I may.
Yes.
Dale, how many businesses have dryers? I'm wondering, because the changes in here say to 1 to 2 family units and those sorts of things in the language. I just heard you say it was for commercial only, but it looked like the changes that are presented in here make it seem like the dwellings were maybe more residential based.
As I understand, for single-family residents, there's no change. That's what our building official has indicated. I am not an electrician. Right. I'm not an electrical engineer. I don't know the code, but that's what our folks have told us the interpretation of that is, so take that for what it's worth.
And maybe just a follow-up question to the fire chief might be able to answer this. Just what problems does this updated code solve? Like, what are there issues with 220 volts? You know, are there? I mean, I'm just curious if there's an issue that is out there that this is addressing for public safety.
Certainly, you know, if you notice in your bathrooms, a lot of your outlets have the GFI.
Yeah.
So that if there's any water or anything, that it cuts the circuit so nobody gets electrocuted or anything like that. That's why those were implemented for the 110 volt, and so I would have to say that for the 220 side, it's the same exact thing.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I yield.
Okay, motion on the floor is for approval of item number 30. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Opposed?
No.
1 no by Lisa Modrick. Next on to Community Planning and Development Services items, and I'd like to go to our Public Works Vice Chair, Lisa Modrick, to have these items read in, please. Starting with 31.
Thank you, Mayor. Community Planning and Development Services Department items. Number 17PL088, a request by Renner Associates LLC for Triple R Construction for a preliminary subdivision plan for proposed lots A, B, and C of Block 6 of Chambers Addition, generally described as being located at 3647 Chambers Street. Recommendation, approve with stipulations.
Second. Who made the motion?
I will.
Okay, motion by Modrick, second by Nordstrom. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Number 32, 17PL096, a request by KTM Design Solutions, Inc. for North Atlantic Developers, LLC, Delaware Land Holdings, LLC, Envirocl, LLC, for a preliminary subdivision plan for proposed lots A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H of Buffalo Crossing West Subdivision, generally described as being located northwest of the intersection of Catron Boulevard and Mount Rushmore Road. And I will move to approve that with stipulations.
Second by Chad Lewis. All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries.
Item 33, number 17PL097, a request by KTM Design Solutions, Inc. for Black Hills Capital 4, LLC, and Pete Hendrickson for a preliminary subdivision plan for proposed lots A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, J, and K of North Valley Park, generally described as being located southeast of the intersection of Creek Drive and Eglin. And I would move to approve that with stipulations.
Second by Jason Solomon. All in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say no. Motion carries.
Item 34, number 17PL098, a request by KTM Design Solutions, Inc. for KTM Design Solutions, Inc. for a preliminary subdivision plan for proposed lots 2 and 3 of Block 5 and lots 5 and 6, Block 1 of Big Sky Business Park, generally described as being located north of Neal Street. And I move to approve this with stipulations.
Second by Jason Solomon. All in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carries. And now on to Public Works Committee items. Can we continue with Mrs. Modrick, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Public Work items number 35, PW 10101706, approve resolution 2017-088, a resolution amending certain fees to be charged for various services, license, permits, and applications, and I recommend to approve.
Second by Richie Nordstrom. All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Motion passes with 1 no from John Roberts, was it? And Drury, 2 noes, Roberts and Drury. Next item, please.
Item 36, PW 101017-07, approve City of Rapid City financial and rate setting policies for the water and water reclamation utilities, and I move to approve.
Second.
Second by Amanda Scott. And we'll go to Jason Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I see we have a representative from our the consultant company that we used. Are we having any sort of presentation or anything tonight given to the council and the public? Maybe Mr. Dale Tech can answer that.
Dale?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, Tom Gould from HDR Engineering is here. We have about a 30-minute presentation, which is the presentation that we gave at our public information meetings. I'll leave it up to the council as to whether or not they want to have Mr. Gould give that presentation. If not, we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have or any concerns that you may have gotten from constituents over the last few days.
Okay, show of hands for who wants to see the 30-minute presentation.
Well, I won't raise my hands, but I do think there's some valuable information that maybe we ought to extract out of there. I mean, I don't know about you all, but I've been receiving calls on this all week and emails, and I think it'd be worthwhile for the public to have some education, so maybe we can just answer some questions at the very least. Yeah, we can post it on the website as well. Is that possible?
Presentation has been posted to the city website.
Very good. So then, since I still have the floor, can I ask a question to our consultant?
Yes, you may.
From HDR? Or Dan, or somebody. Can some of you, one of you, maybe both of you answer some questions? I know Dan's going to have to answer one of these, so. So one of the biggest, I guess the biggest question we have to answer is these rates are going up 43% over 5 years, if I remember correctly, and 10% over the next year. On average, what is that per household for the water and water reclamation?
So let me put my glasses on here, that would help. I'm Tom Gould with HDR Engineering, by the way.
Hey, Tom.
And the current average water bill is $30.72. And let me just describe what you get for that $30.72. That is 7.5 CCF or 100 cubic feet of water. Let me translate that into gallons for people so that they can understand. That's the equivalent of about 5,600 gallons that is delivered to your house for $30.72 in a typical month. On the water reclamation side, that's wastewater or sewer, the typical average bill today is $24.03. And that assumes 6 CCF of wastewater flowing from your house. That's about 4,500 gallons of wastewater. So the total present bill is approximately $54.75 per month. With the proposed rate adjustments, the water bill, using the same assumptions about usage, will go up to $33.73. That's a $3.02 per month change. And on the water reclamation, that will go up to $25.78. That's a $1.75 change per month for a total change, or a typical change, of $4.77 per month. The total bill will be $59.51 on average for a typical residential customer. So the bill in total, water, wastewater, will go from roughly about $54.75 to $59.51.
Okay.
That would be in 2018, starting January 1.
So just less than $5 a month?
Yes.
All right. Next question. So why do we need this increase? What is it going to fund in terms of future projects, current needs? What happens if we do not do this and we stay on the path that we're on? Maybe that's a better way to ask it.
Great question. So the rates are driven by two components. They're typically driven by operation maintenance expenses and capital infrastructure costs. And one of the things that you are probably familiar with is a lot of the rates are being driven by the capital infrastructure costs and how those projects are funded. And there's different ways that you can fund projects. One way is primarily through the rates that people are assessed, but the other way is we issue long-term debt, and we pay for that long-term debt through our rates as we go through time. It's like buying a car. You probably can't pay cash for it, so if you have a large major capital project, you will finance it over a longer time period. One of the things that's driving this particular rate study is the capital infrastructure projects. We are funding approximately $6 million per year on the water side through rates to pay for capital projects, and about $4.5 million per year for capital projects on the wastewater or water reclamation side. To give you some sense of the magnitude of the projects that we're talking about, we have over this projected time period roughly about $124.5 million of water projects, roughly about $11 million per year. And on the sewer side, or the water reclamation side, we have about $62.8 million of projects. Again, this is over an 11-year time period, or an average about $5.7 million per year. And one of the earlier speakers was really very right on point when he talked about the fact that if you don't fund the utility properly, what happens is your infrastructure will begin to fail. And it's just like the roads, it's just like your house. If you don't want to paint your house, or if you don't want to change the oil in your car, yes, you'll save some money, but over the long run, it will end up costing ratepayers more if we don't take care of the system today. The costs are also driven by a couple of things. One is replacement, but the other is also expansion, growth, and regulatory requirements. We've already had the discussion about regulatory requirements, so I won't go there, but that is a part of the cost that you're seeing here.
Okay. And the next question is about folks that are, maybe this is a question for you, Dan. Folks who are on fixed incomes, like elderly and disabled, are there any programs that we have in place to help them with that? Do we know of anything that's
So the answer is yes.
Okay.
There are programs. There are certain qualifications for that program. It's a water and wastewater rate relief programs. And as part of that ordinance or resolution, I can't remember which one it's in.
It's in ordinance.
It's in the ordinance, are the requirements for qualification of those programs. And it's a 20% discount for qualifying customers for a 2-year period, and then you can requalify.
Okay. And that's important to get that word out because, you know, this does impact, I mean, $5 a month may not seem like a lot to everybody, but, you know, per year. But it is, you know, it can hit your pocketbooks pretty strong. And so I think it's good to remember that. I think these are the kinds of hard decisions that we have to make sometimes, but I think we have to be responsible. And if we don't fund it, what happens to our water? I mean, water is life. It's critical. So that's why I'll be supporting this. Thank you for answering the questions.
John Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dan, if you don't mind, a couple of questions. One, I've been on this council for 6.5 years, and I can't believe we didn't start building some of this in prior to this, because this is an awful huge rate all at one time. And we have to have known for years, well, I know we have, because we were talking 2 years ago about the wastewater and building in some monies for it. And I don't disagree. I believe we need this. I wholly believe this. We need this. I see what our infrastructure is doing. I've been harping about our infrastructure for 6.5 years. It's unfortunate that we have to do it this way. I think that there's other ways, and that's why I've been trying to get money out of the Vision Fund for years. I think that, it's unfortunate that this has to be done this way. One of my questions, because I had a constituent ask me this, that huge water leak we had on the corner of 44 and St. Pat, was that factored into the water side of this? Because I know that was, 120 million gallons a year or something like that?
I can actually answer that, and
Yes.
the answer is yes. And
Okay.
what happens is there are a certain amount of unaccounted for water on all water systems.
Yes.
So you start with a gallon, and by the time it gets to the customer's meter, it might be 9/10 of a gallon. And what happens to the difference between those?
Absolutely.
Leakage is certainly a part of that, exactly the kind of things that you talk about, main breaks, but we also do flushing. There's various O&M activities, so yes, it was taken into account.
Well, it was my understanding, though, that leak was for roughly a decade. It wasn't like it was something that just popped up because it was a mainline leak. I mean, it leaked millions and millions and hundreds of millions of gallons over a 10-year period. But I'm glad that was factored in there. I think that
It's part of the annual unaccounted water for the system, which is part of the cost of the system.
Yes, yes. Is there any way to spread this out more over time, or does this have to be a 43% increase over 5 years? Is there a possibility of doing it any other way?
We have been looking at this for over about 6 to 7 months with an executive committee. These are the recommendations that, in working with that committee, that we've come up with. One of the things that is driving this is, without a rate increase over the last 5 years, our reserves have gotten to an uncomfortably low level. And so to start building those reserves back up to a place that we are more comfortable with, we need to start increasing revenue more quickly, and that is why you see some of the larger increases early on. Before you tonight are some policies on how this rate study was conducted, and how we're recommending rate studies be conducted in the future. And the core or the beginning of those policies is how we set reserves. At what level should reserves be at? And so it was a decision by the executive committee that as part of this rate study or rate increase, that at the end of this 5-year period, we meet those reserve levels. So we're not going in 1 year to meet their levels. We're balancing it out over a 5-year period to get to the reserve levels and still be able to maintain the infrastructure and the capital improvement projects that we feel are needed to be done over the next 5 years.
And like I said, I definitely don't disagree with that. We have a tremendous amount of capital projects that need to be done, you know, and I think this, and I wish this would just highlight for the people of Rapid City just how much money the vision takes out of our CIP. It's a wonderful project. It's been a wonderful project for 30 plus years. It's been fantastic, but we've got behind on our infrastructure. And we need to, and I've never said we need to take it all, I just say we need to take some of that money and start putting it back into our capital investments. So even though I know what you're doing and why you're doing it, I can't vote for this. I've got too many constituents, and it's unfortunate because I see this in my working career all the time where people do have the ability to have property tax rebates, the ability to have, you know, their water and their sewer rebated. The only problem is most people don't know about it. We need to have some kind of a campaign to let these people know that there's some relief out there for them, because a lot of people do not realize it. And you know, it's sad. These people can get some relief and they don't realize it. So anyway, thank you.
Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. Dan, if you'll repeat on the levels of funding where we're at right now. On the reserve funds, what's our level at right now?
On the water side, we're at approximately $2 million in our reserve fund, and on the waste or water reclamation side, that fund is less than $500,000.
I appreciate it. Thank you. And then remind me again about how the capital projects that we've got lined up, about how much per year we got. Could you remind us on that?
Yeah, go ahead. I believe on the water side is approximately $6 million a year, and on the water reclamation side is approximately $4.5 million per year that are funded directly by rates, not by debt service.
Thank you. So just a demonstration of how inadequate the funding is in the capital and also in the reserve fund. So, and then I also want to applaud you folks for bringing in city council members early on in the process of getting them educated on how this process works, and the reason why we need development of our infrastructure as well, and explaining to them. The disappointing part of it is, and I'm not blaming anybody here on this, but the disappointing part of it is the public meetings. I don't want to ask you how many people came to those meetings, but I know the attendance was abysmal. So do we need more time to explain this to the public? Because I know between now and the second reading, we'll have that opportunity. So how do we get this information out to the public? What we've got going on currently with the current abilities or opportunities we have getting to the public, but they're just not showing up. Is there something else that we're missing that we can't get the public to come and attend? I know that's asking to read the mind of the public, but help me explain this to the public, why they need to come to meetings like this.
Well, I'm not sure I'm the person to bring that up or
and I'm putting you in an
that.
unfair
But
position.
Yes,
so
we have gone out. We did 2 public presentations last week, and your description of the attendance is accurate. And tonight we were prepared again. I understand it's a long presentation, but if additional groups, city groups, or whoever would like to have the presentation, they probably wouldn't get Mr. Gould, but I would give my best shot at giving a presentation to anybody that requests it within the community.
thank you, and I think that's hopefully people will take that opportunity to give you a call or give the city staff a call and get that opportunity available to the public. So I'm just disappointed that we cannot get the public interested in something like this. And I've seen a few emails, maybe one or two, and I've also posted this up on Facebook, a couple of comments on that, and it's nothing. So when I hear the comments coming from the let's slow it down, let's take a different approach to this, that's the only times that I hear very minimal comments about something like that. And I want to support this program because I believe just because of where we're at currently, we need to move forward on this. Thank you. I appreciate your trying to read the mind of the public.
Becky Drury.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for all the hard work you've put into this, because I know this couldn't have been an easy task to come up with. I have received phone calls, and they're not happy with the 43% rate, and it seems almost unfair to me and my constituents that we are going to make them make up for what the city failed to do in the last 5 or 10 years by keeping up with the pace. So for that reason, I will probably vote against this, but I would encourage more public meetings. I know I was going to attend but was unable to attend last week. But maybe now that people are more aware of it because of the coverage in the news media, they would be more willing to come and learn. And then I would hope on the other flip side is that we would also be able to listen to their responses or what they want done. And they might have some good solutions too, because I think 43% over 5 years for any incremental change is almost massive, especially when we're already voted to maybe give away a $1.4 million piece of property, but then we're going to ask our constituents to pay more. It just seems like a disconnect at the city level, and that bothers me.
Can I make one comment about the utilities? The utilities are an enterprise fund. I know, so let me try and explain it for the public. An enterprise fund basically means that the utilities must be self-supporting, and they must be supported by the rates that are charged. These are not taxes, these are services for, or these are fees for the services which are provided. And so when we talk about a self-sustaining fund, we must have prudent and adequate levels of funding, and so that in essence is what this is about. Again, I've worked with a lot of city councils, and I often hear them say, gee, I wish we had just changed the rates every year for the last 5 years. Well, that's not where we're at, unfortunately. Where we are at is where we are at. And so the funds need to be self-sustaining and prudently funded. So,
and I understand they need to be self-sustaining, but I'm just, and I guess I asked this a couple times, is why can't the reserves be built up maybe over 7 years or over 10 years? Why does it have to be 5? If to maybe take the increase down, so it's not 43%. Could we just extend the building up of the reserves over 7 years or over 10 years? And I never really got a good answer for that, and that concerns me.
okay, thank you.
I yield.
Okay, the motion on the floor is for approval of item 36. All in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Okay, motion passes with 2 noes. Item 36A. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. BW 092617-13, appeal of denied exception request by Prairie Valley Development Company, LLC, to waive the requirement to construct a 12-inch diameter water main in Anderson Road. This item had been continued on October 2nd, and the applicant has requested it continue to November 6th, and I make that motion to continue.
Second. Okay, second by Jason Solomon. All in favor of continuing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. 36B. 36B is the Community Development Block Grant item to approve Youth and Family Services request to change the use of the grant funding. And we have Barb Garcia in the audience if someone wants to talk to her. Jason Solomon.
Thank you, and if I can call Barb Garcia to the podium. Hi, Barb. You want to remind everybody what your role is?
Barbara Garcia, Community Development Manager.
Thank you. So this was placed back on the agenda. It had been continued because I know there are questions for you at Legal and Finance, and you weren't able to attend that day. I think one of the big questions are the changes that Youth and Family Services are requesting to use the funds that were earmarked for a roof for various other projects. Is that allowable? Are there any concerns with that? I guess could you get us up to speed on what your recommendation is and why?
Sure. It is eligible. The block grant funds are flexible funds, and because they primarily work with construction, rehab, and facilities, all of those projects are difficult and get delayed, and there are two main things that HUD wants us to do, and that's help low-income people and spend our funds in a timely fashion. We're under the timely fashion crunch right now. We have to spend over $358,000 by January, and so one of the reasons for this change, originally, back when we did the reallocation of funds, that was in March. And back in March, we were asking for people with projects who could get them started right away. The Adams Street facility has always been the #1 priority for YFS. However, at that time, if we go back to when we were asking them for the applications, they did not have all of their fundraising done, and so they couldn't guarantee that they could start on the Adams Street facility itself. They could do the alley, but they could not do that building. They weren't able to commit to that time that they could get it done by January for us. So they had the project for the roof at the, I forgot the name of this, the Plaza, thank you, at Plaza. Because we were looking for projects and we didn't have enough of them to spend our funds. We needed to get the funds allocated. And so we took the Plaza. Since that time, they have gotten their fundraising on. They were able to start moving forward, and they can start on the facility itself. In this case, because of the time frame we're in, indoor projects that they have are more likely to get done on time than a roof on the other one, because they won't be able to start until December. If they go with that, they still have to get their bids and move forward, and we have to go out to a public comment period and do all these other things. So in this particular situation, I strongly approve of changing the use of their funds. I just talked to them and got a progress report today. The alley, they should have completed by mid-November. These 3 projects that they're looking at doing the bathroom, that one can be done by mid-December, if we approve that. And the HVAC move up to the roof can be completed by the end of December. All of those timeframes meet our criteria of being able to move forward. So the roof at Plaza was less important than getting this big facility done. You know, this is where all the kids are, is at the Adams Street. So there is a higher priority on that building for them than there is on the Plaza, which is primarily administrative offices.
Okay. I assume the roof is probably still in need, but because you said it is eligible and that these projects are going to happen in a timely manner and you are recommending it, I can get behind it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. Barb, I appreciate you bringing this forward, and I was grateful that we were able to get this put on tonight's agenda, and I do support the project. However, if there's a way we can find out how we're not putting you under a time constraint, because the last 2 times you've come to the council, you've been under a time constraint of some, one various means or something or another. It's just some way to get you out of under being that. Every time I see you, I don't want to see you in front of us having a time issue. So if there's a way you can figure out something on that, I would appreciate it. But I'm going to still support this project. Thank you, Barb.
Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. Barb, I won't be supporting this. My concern is a lot like Alderman Nordstrom has said. For the last year to 18 months, it seems like everything that's brought to the council is like, it has to be done now. And my biggest concern with this one is I support YFS, but they had a project in mind. It went through committee. It was approved. It was approved by City Council for the roof replacement. And then magically they get to reallocate the funds. I'm sure there's some other well-deserved organizations that would have same projects that could utilize these funds in a timely fashion as well. But since YFS already earmarked this for one project, they get to miraculously reshuffle these funds for 3 other priorities. And I just can't support that in this timely fashion. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. There's no motion on this item, I don't believe.
I'd like to move.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Modrick, second by Solomon. John Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Barb, I want to tell you, I completely support this. You know, as long as they've been allocated the money, and who really cares where it's going? We know it's going to go to a good cause. We know YFS does a wonderful job. We know that, you know, they're going to spend their money appropriately. And I do want to commend you on what you do, because I know I've had the unfortunateness, I don't know if that's a word, to work with HUD in the last year. And it's not easy for you. Every time you turn around, there's some kind of a time frame, some time, you know, constraint, and it makes it very difficult, and you have a very difficult job. So I just appreciate what you do. I appreciate what YFS does, and I wholeheartedly support this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, motion on the table is to approve. All in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Opposed? One no from Amanda Scott. Motion carries. Okay. This takes us on to alcoholic beverage license applications. Items 30 through 40 could certainly be taken at the same time. 37. What did I just say?
You said 30.
37. I said 37, didn't I?
I move to approve.
Okay. Okay. If we can have a motion to approve 37 through 39. Okay, 37 through 40. That be okay?
Yes.
Okay. And we're looking at the police chief, and if there are any red flags or anything like that, he would let us know. So we have a motion and a second to approve 37 through 40. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Under staff items, 41, approved resolution 2017-096, acknowledging correction to May 15th, 2017 City Council minutes. Approved by Drew and a second by Drury. And Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mary. What is the correction?
Pauline Sumption.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The original motions read to approve a rezoning from general commercial district to light industrial district. It should have had the words "in conjunction with an initial plan development" included in that. So this is just adding those words.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Motion on the floor to approve. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Under appeals, the appeal of denied security license, Raymond Patterson. This item continued from the September 5th City Council meeting. Mr. Patterson here. Okay. We'll go to Lisa Modrick.
Thank you. I did want to acknowledge that he was here.
Is he here?
No?
No, it does not appear that Raymond Patterson is here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Amanda Scott.
I'd like to make the motion to uphold the denial of the security license.
Okay, second by John Roberts. Seeing no discussion, all in favor of denying the, approving the denial, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Now on to public hearing items 43 through 45. We'll open the public hearing. We have one speaker request for James Bialotta on item 45.
Thank you, Council. I was able to speak to a few of you before the meeting and hand out some handouts. This is in regards to an assessment for cleanup of miscellaneous property. This cleanup took place in March of this year. I did not acquire this property until May 30th. This should have been assessed to the previous owner. In this case, this was a treasurer's deed, which trumps all other liens and actions. Also, notices were given out in March of the intent to take deed, and that would have included the city. Since this time, we also completed lien releases from all other lien holders regarding this property, and that was completed about a week before I received this letter, which I received just last Saturday. I would ask that the assessment be removed from the home and possibly assigned to the individual. Has nothing to do with me or owning this home, since it happened prior. In addition to that, if it can make anyone feel a little bit better about the funds, we're going to be increasing the property value of this home significantly, probably 35%. And I've already cleaned the property immensely. I put it on Facebook. We cleaned a 30-yard roll-off out of the yard and about 17 truckloads of trash. We saved the city a lot of hassle by taking over this property, and I'd hope that you'd pass along that benefit to me and remove this assessment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And that'll close the public hearing. It's now on to consent public hearing items 43 through 45. We'll go to Pauline Sumption.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I need to remove 45 from consent to make one change.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve 43 and 44? Motion by Solomon, second by Drury. All in favor of approval of 43 and 44, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Now on to 45. Approve Resolution 2017-083B, a resolution levying assessment for cleanup of miscellaneous property. And Pauline Sumption again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On number 25, we did receive partial payment today for $202, and so that amount needs to be changed to $100.
Okay. Duly noted. Amanda Scott. Oops.
Thank you, Mayor. May I ask our City Attorney, Joel Landine, a question, please?
Please do.
Thank you. Joel, so in reference to Mr., I can never say his name, Bialotta. Thank you. The one thing I did ask Pauline over here, and she'll correct me if I'm wrong, but since he mentioned that this was a treasurer's deed, she couldn't recall, didn't want to speak out of turn, but she couldn't recall whenever we have had a treasurer's deed with an assessment that's come in due to the late process of first making notification, then having the property cleaned up, and then having it put on the assessment roll. Does this transfer of property being a treasurer's deed have any impact on removing special assessments?
You know, I'm not sure what the effect of that honestly is on the special assessment. Perhaps if you want to remove this property and continue it for a couple of weeks, we can look at the legality of it, and we can talk to Mr. Bialotta and try to get it straightened out when the transfer occurred, and if we confirm that and look at it, then we might make a different recommendation as far as how to handle it.
Thank you, Joel. Since I've already spoken, I can't make that motion, but I sure would support that motion.
Lisa Modrick.
Thank you, Mayor. I will make that motion.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. And which item on the list is that? Item number 2?
Item 3.
Okay, John Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Bialotta was sitting there raising his hand. I didn't know if he wanted to say something
Yeah, in the city paperwork, it shows the treasurer's deed was issued on 5/30 of 2017. The cleanup action was in March, so it was 2 months after the assessment. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, motion on the floor is to approve with one noted change to item number 25 and the removal of item number 2. All in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Non-consent public hearing items 46 and 47. Number 46, second reading, ordinance 6199, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of Chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. A request by DTH LLC for rezoning from agricultural district to light industrial district for property generally described as being located east of Dias Avenue. Committee recommendation was to approve. Motion to approve by Laurenti, second by Drew. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. 47, Radio Towers Subdivision, a request by Shannon Vasquez Nets of Baseline Surveying for Rockney Rap Trust for a vacation right-of-way for property generally described as being in the southeast corner of the intersection of East Franklin and Cherry Avenue. And I have information that the applicant is desiring to withdraw this request.
I acknowledge. Move to acknowledge.
Okay, motion to acknowledge by Solomon. Second. And a second by Nordstrom. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. The bill list will go to Finance Officer Pauline Sumption, 48.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are no additions to the bill list, so the total is that which is attached at $7,975,424.67.
Motion to approve by Laurenti, second by Solomon. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
Laurenti, second by Drury. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. We are adjourned.